Well everyone, welcome back to another video. And I have a confession to make. And that confession is, I've been hiding a big project from you guys for a little while now. And that's what is all on this table here. So, I guess without further ado, let me go ahead and get these big Tycon boxes busted open. Some of you guys may know what's going on already, some may not, but it all makes sense by the end of the video. So let me get these Tycon boxes busted open, get a bunch of parts and pieces laid out on my table here, and we can go over what exactly all of this is for and what we're going to be doing with it. In order to explain what I have going on the table behind me now, we need to take a step back and look back about a year ago in the past. So at that point in time, I guess we can go over and look at the car. I had gone ahead and built the exhaust for the Supra. So if you guys remember, or if you look back in the video history, there is a 5-inch downpipe, obviously off of the turbo, that's mounted down there, snakes around, makes its way back to kind of where that mid plate is, if you guys can see that. And from there, I used the aluminum exhaust that I had built for this car ages ago. I mean, this exhaust is probably the better part of a decade old at this point in time. And I made it fit and made it work, and I built this muffler for it. So it's a 5-inch aluminum exhaust from a 5-inch stainless downpipe all the way back. Recirculated dump tubes, obviously this muffler and everything else. And this was never intended to be the permanent solution for the exhaust for this car. I always had the intent to build something cooler, something crazier for it, but at that point in time, both time and money did not permit me to do anything interesting with it. So at this point in time, I now have the ability to take on a cooler project for it and a cooler exhaust, which is what all of the stuff on the table over here is. Now we have all of the exhaust materials as well as a few new tools to allow me to bring this exhaust from concept to reality. And I guess we can just start going over stuff on the table. And there's quite a bit, but I'll try to get through it without being too wordy or too boring or anything else. So I guess let's start on the right side over here and work our way across this direction. So these two sections of tube right here. My goal has always been to have no stainless in the exhaust system. And right now, obviously, like I said, we have a stainless downpipe aluminum exhaust. Fine for the time being, but not what I wanted for the long term. So I had searched around to try to find 4.5-inch Inconel bends, or find somebody that could make them for me. As Inconel being a nickel alloy and being what they use for exhausts, not only at the highest level of motorsports, but for rocket engines and things along those lines, it's pretty much inarguably the best material you can use for exhaust components. Now the header on the car is an Inconel piece, and I wanted to also build an Inconel downpipe and Inconel exhaust components for it, which is where these sections of tube come in. Like I said, I was trying to find somebody that could make 4.5-inch Inconel bends for me. It came up empty-handed that way. And I got to looking around on eBay. And I found I believe they are a machine shop out in one of the Dakotas in the US here that was selling these pieces. And this was originally all one section, right around 10 feet. And if you guys can read this right here, roughly 5-inch 100 thousandths OD. It's 040 something wall, alloy 625. This is 5-inch Inconel tubing, and you can see a pretty thin wall on it, and not exactly what I was looking for, but what I was able to acquire to build the new downpipe. Now, if you guys have been on the channel for any length of time, you've heard me talk about how I dislike pie cuts, and I don't like making them. I don't like the amount of time that it takes to build a part out of pie cuts, but in this instance, that's exactly what we're going to have to do. And like I said, it was limited. I was lucky to find these pieces of material in the first place, let alone to try to find somebody to bend them to the appropriate centerline radius and the appropriate bends that I need to make the downpipe for this. So it's one of the instances where beggars can't be choosers. And I get to make some Inconel pie cuts, and when it comes time to actually do that, I can go over with you guys how I make pie cuts, what to look for, what to do, what not to do, so on and so forth. So it serves as a refresher for me, and it serves as a teaching point from me to you guys. So I look forward to that, and that'll be the first big portion of building this new exhaust system. Beyond that, if we move back to the other pieces of tubing, you can see that we have 4 pieces of perforated tube, 4 pieces of straight tube here. Now these perforated tubes will serve as the internal baffled sections of the new mufflers. And I say that in the plural tense or plural context because there will be multiple mufflers on this car. One of the big reasons for building this new exhaust in the first place is the car is a little bit too loud for my liking, which might sound a little bit oxymoronic. If you have a race car, you're not really concerned about how loud or drony or anything else it is. But this isn't your typical race car. I don't think of things in the typical manner with cars like this. So just because it has a crazy turbo setup and everything else, why can't it be civilized at the same time? So these will be the insides of the mufflers, and rather than making my own perforated sheet out of either drilling a piece of tubing or buying perforated sheet metal and rolling it into tubes, Tycon sells these, so I was able to purchase them from them and make my life a whole lot easier in building these new mufflers. And then behind the perforated tubes, we have these sections that are all 4.5-inch titanium as opposed to 5-inch that's on the car now. So my mindset, my idea behind this is just ground clearance. So not that the car has a ground clearance issue right now, but an aluminum exhaust, I don't care nearly as much about dragging it across a speed bump in a parking lot or anything else as I do a titanium system that's a little bit more expensive to replace. So we're going with all 4.5-inch tubing for the catback essentially, or the exhaust system on it, which all of the bends right here, these are all 4.5-inch bends, these 45s are all 4.5, and this one right here is a 5-inch bend. So what I'm going to be doing is essentially building 2 exhausts in one. So the way that this exhaust will be designed is a 5-inch Inconel downpipe to either a 4.5-inch titanium exhaust system, a street exhaust system with a couple of mufflers, or I have the ability to swap on this, what will be this 5-inch titanium 45 with a straight section off of it. And I can have the best of both the street and the race world with just loosening a couple of fasteners and swapping a simple part out. So the street system, obviously 4.5 and 5 inches are not the same diameter. So I have a few extra of these, but I'll be using this 4.5 to 5-inch transitional cone to step down out of the downpipe to the diameter of the exhaust system. And then these for 4-inch to 4.5-inch concentric cones will be the inlets and the outlets of the mufflers. As the mufflers, I was only able to get materials easily to make the insides of the mufflers 4-inch as opposed to 4.5. So the exhaust system will neck down going in and out of, or it will neck down going into the mufflers and expand back out coming out of them, which for performance might be a detriment, but for a street system to keep it quiet, I'd rather step the system down, run mufflers, etc., to make my life a little bit more enjoyable when I'm driving the car. So that's all of the concentric cones, what they are used for, and then to the left of them are the 2 muffler bodies. Now, I probably have more muffler body or muffler case material than I need, but I have it here. I'd rather have too much than too little, and I can stuff something on the shelf much more quickly than I can wait on new parts to come in. So these are muffler bodies that Tycon sells. And all the titanium parts here, they are all Tycon Industries components. They have been a crucial component of building all of not only the stainless parts on the car with their sister company, Stainless Bros, but all of the titanium parts that I build here are all made out of Tycon materials. They're awesome people there. They've always treated me very well, and they provide a stellar product that if you're going to use titanium and you're not using Tycon, you're crazy. But these muffler bodies, they should be 9-inch long diameter on the oval, 6-inch narrow diameter on the oval, and 24 inches long. So we have 4 feet worth of muffler case that we can use if need be. And I can always cut these down to the lengths that I need, depending on how they fit under the car, how everything's lining up, how everything's coming together. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I should have more than enough muffler case to build a couple of decent sized mufflers that'll really help quiet this thing down. These guys right here are the muffler caps. So rather than trying to make a piece, again, Tycon sells these. These are caps specifically designed for their muffler cases right there. So these ones are set up for 4-inch tubing, 4-inch tubing to go through the cap. And I believe they offer a couple different sizes of these. Don't quote me on that. Double check before you just assume that they offer exactly what you need. But this makes building a titanium muffler extraordinarily easy, as opposed to trying to make your own case shape, make your own perforated tube, make your own caps and everything. You guys can probably tell by now, if you've been on the channel for any length of time, I'm all about DIY, all about making my own stuff. But in some instances like this, it does pay dividends just to order the parts, have them show up, and you just do some final assembly work. Past the muffler cases, we have the packing material for the mufflers, and I'm not sure if I have as much as I need for this, but again, Tycon sells it. This is just fiberglass packing material. You just cut the bag open, stuff it in there, however tight or however loose you want the pack on the inside of the muffler to be. It's at your discretion how you can pack it and how you can make it work. So I bought 5 bags of it. Again, that may not be enough for the amount of area, or I guess the volume that I'm trying to fill with it, but that's a good start. At least I can always order more, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So we have V-band assemblies next, and I guess we'll go through all of this stuff right here before we move to that side of the table. These two right here are 5-inch titanium female V-band flanges. So I have 2 of those, one of which will go on our 5-inch brace turn down, the other of which will be the inlet to the full street exhaust system. I have 2 Turbo Smart 50mm wastegate outlet flanges. Since I'll be recirculating the wastegates again, it's to keep it that much more civilized. I had to get 2 new flanges for that, and these are actually stainless steel, as well as our O2 bung. This is one of the heatsink O2 bungs that I've been using on different projects lately. Again, I don't know how much they actually benefit the sensor or anything else, but I really like the look of them. They look really cool in race car, so that's what I went with there. We have 2 vibrant 2-inch quick release V-band assemblies. These are stainless steel, and all the V-band assemblies, you can see these 2 here, this one here, this one here, they're all quick releases. I really like the idea of the quick release. So you have your normal bolt that goes through, but back on this side, see if I can do this one-handed. Maybe I can. There we go. You have this latch on the back side. So makes it that much easier to install and remove V-band assemblies if you need to. And in my opinion, that's the correct clamp to use on any V-band. So beyond the 2 vibrant assemblies, and these are stainless as well, we have a stainless ProMod turbine outlet flange and another Tycon Stainless Bros piece. Really nice, good surface finish on it. good quality. I've used these flanges in the past with great success and very happy with them, very happy with the way they weld and everything. Could not ask for anything better as far as that flange is concerned. And our last V-band assembly is actually not a Ticon piece. This is a 4.5-inch titanium V-band assembly, again with a quick release clamp on it. And I would have bought one from Ticon, but they don't offer a 4.5-inch V-band assembly in titanium, or I don't think they even offer one in stainless as far as their Stainless Bros line goes. So going to 4.5-inch tube, I didn't want to negate the additional ground clearance by having to step it out to a 5-inch V-band assembly, step it back down to 4.5-inch tube. I just wanted to use a 4.5-inch V-band assembly, and a quick Google search found this one. I ordered it, showed up. It's nice quality and everything else, and it's a male-female receiver-style V-band assembly, the same way that all of the other V-bands on this setup are going to be. So it follows in line with that, and it'll work phenomenally to make this a multi-piece exhaust system. So that way, as I'm installing and removing the thing by myself here, it'll make it that much easier and that much less cumbersome for me to contend with installing or removing the system. Moving on to the left side of the table here, we get into some other fun components, fun materials, and things that I'm very excited about. So we'll dive into our 180-degree bends right here. Now you can see kind of the weird end on it, and you can see how this doesn't exactly look like a piece of stainless, right? Well, that's because they are not stainless. These are 3 Inconel 180-degree bends built to the specs that I needed from the good people over at Good Fabs in the UK. So if you're not familiar with Good Fabs, I suggest looking them up, reading up on the history and heritage of the company. It's very interesting. They have a rich history and a rich pedigree of providing exhaust systems for the highest level of motorsports, be that F1, IndyCar, WRC, so on and so forth. They've been there, they've done it all, and they are one of, if not the best tubing shop and mandrel bending shop in the world, in my opinion. So when it came time to get these bends made, I knew I wasn't going through anybody else. And although they were not cheap, as anything Inconel that you get is not going to be cheap, they were entirely worth it. And I've worked with the materials before. I know what to expect with the weld quality and the tube quality, just the materials quality overall of what they provide. And that's who I had to use to get these pieces for it. So these 3 bends will be used to make the new wastegate recirculations. So the bends are pretty self-explanatory. These will be cut and sectioned and everything else to get the angles and everything that we need to make the new wastegate recirculation provisions. And the one pieces that I didn't bring out here are 2 new flex bellows from the good people at Ace Race Parts. And it's stainless flex bellows, stainless flanges, Inconel tubing throughout, as you can weld those 2 materials together without any issue. And I have the correct filler rods here to make that happen. I just brought the flex bellows out because I'd rather show them than just talk about them. Again, really, really nice pieces. And a flex bellow, this is the outlet side of it. This is the inlet side. You can tell by this ridge on the inside where my index finger is. They are directional in terms of how they flow. That's for all flex bellows that I'm aware of. But those will provide an area for the wastegate provisions to expand and contract without breaking the tubing that's they're comprised of. So those are necessary to be on there to make everything work the way I want it to. And I used these same bellows on the stainless system that's on the car now. Again, I know what to expect as far as the weld quality and everything else is concerned with them, so I felt very confident with using those on this new system. Now moving into the new tooling that we're using, or actually hold on, there's one last thing I wanted to show. So you may have seen a moment ago that I bypassed these washers, and what the washers are going to be used for, since this is, I believe, 042 wall tubing that's pretty thin and to have an O2 sensor sitting there and rattling around and everything could possibly rupture the tube. So one of these two washers will be an O2 bung brace. And these washers were sourced through McMaster-Carr, which if you guys need any industrial supplies and aren't aware of McMaster-Carr, they are a phenomenal place, very easy to use, intuitive website. And at this point in time, they are my go-to industrial supplier for fasteners, for kind of oddball things like this, all different types of materials and everything else. It's an awesome website, very extensive catalog, highly recommend using them. So now that we are done talking about the materials, let's go ahead and talk about the new tooling. So starting at the back of the table and working our way forwards, we have a new chop saw, and this is just a Harbor Freight piece, but the Harbor Freight tools, they've actually really came quite a far way in terms of quality and everything else is concerned with them. And whether you're embarrassed to say it or not, we all probably have Harbor Freight tools in our toolboxes, and frankly, I don't care. They work well, they're cheap, they're plentiful, and everything else. And this is what we'll be using to cut all of the Inconel for this project. So, you guys have heard me talk about it before. Inconel does not cut easily with a bandsaw or anything other than using abrasive cutting, from at least my experience. So, I needed some sort of a chop box or chop saw to cut all the pie cuts for the downpipe. And I went and I looked at a couple of different options they had at Harbor Freight, did some online research to figure out what the different options were and the price points and everything else. And this particular chop saw checked all the boxes for me. And it also has these holes on both the pivot jaw and the clamping jaw on the vise here, so that way I can make little adapter plates or little extensions onto those two sides of the vise to more properly hold the 5-inch tube in place as I'm cutting all of these pieces for it. So I'm excited to use that. We won't get to use it right away or get to do anything with this right away rather. Got a little bit ahead of my words there, but everything is here for it, and we have everything that we need to do all of the cutting we need to, including a pack of replacement cutoff wheels themselves or chop saw blades. Right here is a new DA sander, and use the proper tool for the worky. It's kind of funny, but this is a 5-inch DA as opposed to the 6-inch one that you guys have seen me use on the channel for as long as I've been filming. And the reason I wanted to go with a 5-inch one now is I wanted to use these abrasives. And this is one of Diablo Tools, and I use their abrasives pretty extensively here in the shop. But these are what they call their sand net abrasives. And the big drawing factor to me for these was the fact that they're 400 grit. Now I wanted to go with a tight grit as I'm going to be sanding all of the surfaces of all the titanium components, as I'm not going to sit here and polish all of these. I just don't have the time or the desire to do that. So we'll put a nice DA'd finish on it, and the higher the grit, the finer the abrasive that you use for DA work like that, the smoother and nicer the final surface finish ends up being. So between these pads and the new DA and these guys right here, which are DA soft pads, and I guess I can show you on the 6-inch DA, or I can show you the soft pad for it. What a soft pad is, if you guys aren't familiar, it's a hook and loop foam pad. One side of it puts your actual sanding disc on, the other side fastens to the, I guess would be the hook portion of the hook and loop on the DA itself, and it allows you to work around round contours, whether it be tubing like this, whether it be doing auto body or anything else you'd use a DA for. It allows you to make an organic curve or keep working along an organic curve, as opposed to trying to do it with the flat bottom of the DA and either having to make 1,000 passes or not having a portion of it covered with the sanding or with the abrasive as you're going over top of it. So those soft pads will make that much easier to do, and I bought a pack of them. Not that I think I've ever worn a soft pad out, but it's good to have extras, so that's exactly what I ordered. And coming down to the final thing on the table here, this is Inconel MIG wire. Now, none of this stuff will be MIG welded, so why exactly do I have MIG wire? Well, the answer is very simple. The filler rod that you're able to get, the straight TIG rods that you're able to get for Inconel welding, typically you can only get them at 0.45 at their smallest, their most narrow. And 0.45 ends up being still a little bit too thick for Inconel tubing work. And if you're working with a little bit thicker material like piping or something along those lines, it would probably be more adequate. But 0.45 when you're welding 40,000, 30,000 or even thinner Inconel tubing, it quenches the puddle or cools it off too much where the puddle can get erratic, or the amount of heat that you have to apply to it to melt the filler rod correctly can end up very easily popping holes in the tubing that you're working with. So I searched around for 0.35 or thinner titanium, or not titanium, but Inconel filler rod for TIG, and came up with one result that ended up being a dead end. So I went to my local welding supplier that they work with Crown Alloys, which is probably my favorite filler rod company that I've used their materials and their products with, and was able to find this 0.35 MIG wire spool. It's a 2-pound spool, and although it was not cheap, I still got 2 pounds of wire, and the thinner the wire is, the more of it you get per pound. So this should be more than enough to do this job. The only issue is when it comes off of the spool, being that it was wrapped around a spool in a circular fashion, the wire is curved. So we need to figure out how to straighten it, which, to be transparent, I already have figured that out, and we will cross that bridge, and I'll show you guys the trick that I learned from another YouTube video when the time comes when we're actually going to start welding this stuff. So that about covers what we're doing for the exhaust on the Supra, and this will be the first big project to do this winter on the car to get it ready for its street and race duty next season, as we're right about at the end of the season here, and I've started to get the car tuned. I need to do a few other odds and ends before it's ready to go to the dyno, and before it's ready to see race duty or to see any actual significant use. So before we know it, snow will be on the ground here, and the car will be put up for the winter and for upgrades and modifications and everything else, as is tradition in these parts. But this at least is a look at the first big thing that we're going to work on. I cannot wait to start cutting and fitting and working with all these materials and building the ultimate exhaust that I've always wanted to build for this car since the beginning of the project, essentially. So hopefully all this made sense, and hopefully listening to me drone on about materials and design ideas and everything else for a half hour or whatever this video is wasn't too boring. And if you stuck around for the whole time, I thank you very much, and I can't wait to take you guys along for this ride and this build. But before I ramble on for any more, because I'm sure you're sick of hearing my voice, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So thank you guys as always for tuning in for big projects like this, or Jared's SRT, and all the things that I have going on here, both now and in the future, with other cool things that we'll have coming. So it means the world to me that you guys take the time out of your lives to come along for this wild ride with me, and I'm happy to have you. So this video will be a little bit out of order, as I got way too excited for all this stuff, and I still have a few things to do on this car, being the trim rings and a couple other things, which by the time that this video releases, this project will have already been completed, but that's no matter. Hope you guys understand, and I'm sure everybody's been in the same spot where you get a new thing in, and you're so excited to show everybody that everything else can take a back seat for a little while until you work the excitement out of your system. But with all that being said, I'll get back on Jared's car and get that wrapped up for what will have been the previous video for you guys. And I guess going forward, we'll be working on this crazy project. But that will be for the next video, and let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next episode.